I woke up from surgery with my mouth dry and my head foggy, listening to my daughter argue quietly with someone in the hallway. She didn't know I was awake. She said my name once, then laughed, softly, nervously, and said just a few weeks, then it's done, the other voice asked. And if he hears you, she replied, he won't. That's when my heart started racing. I didn't open my eyes right away after she finished speaking. I stayed still, breathing shallow, letting the beeping of the monitor keep its steady rhythm while my mind raced ahead of my body. The fog from the anesthesia hadn't fully lifted, but fear has a way of cutting through haze. I told myself I must have misunderstood. People say strange things in hospitals. People joke. People cope badly. Still, the way she laughed stayed with me. A nurse came in a moment later, cheerful, efficient, adjusting tubes and checking numbers. She asked how I felt. I said I was fine, because that's what you say when you don't want more questions. My daughter followed her in, all concern and softness, her hand warm on my arm. "Dad," she said, "you scared me." I nodded, watching her face closely, searching for cracks, for signs of the voice I'd heard. She told me, "The surgery went well. Textbook," the doctor said. "I'd need help for a while, weeks maybe longer, but I'd be back on my feet. Don't worry," she added quickly. "You'll stay with me. I'll take care of everything." She smiled then, wide and practiced, the smile she used when she wanted to sound confident. I smiled back, because that's what fathers do when their daughters promise to protect them. The doctor came by later and explained things in careful terms. Recovery, physical therapy, no lifting, no driving. He spoke to my daughter more than to me, which bothered me more than I expected. She nodded at all the right moments, asked smart questions, took notes on her phone. She looked prepared, responsible, proud, even. I told myself again that I was imagining danger where there was none. They discharged me 2 days later. She helped me dress, helped me into the car, adjusted the seat so my leg wouldn't strain. Her house was 15 minutes away. I'd been there dozens of times before, but this time felt different, like I was crossing a line I couldn't easily step back over. She'd set up a bed in the downstairs guest room. "No stairs," she said. "Doctor's orders." I didn't argue. The first night she cooked soup and sat with me while I ate. She reminded me of my pills, set alarms on her phone, told me not to rush. I thanked her more than once. She brushed it off. "You did everything for me," she said. "Let me do this." That should have felt good. Instead, it felt like a door quietly closing somewhere behind me. On the third morning, I woke early. Pain does that. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel too loud. I needed the bathroom and didn't want to wake her, so I moved slowly, carefully, leaning on the walker she'd insisted I use. As I passed the kitchen, I heard voices. Her voice, and another, lower, unfamiliar. I stopped without meaning to. The words weren't meant for me. I knew that, and maybe that's why they felt heavier. "Lydia, he's weaker than I thought," she said. The doctor was right. The other voice asked something I couldn't make out. She sighed. "I can manage him. It's temporary. We just need time." There was that word again. Temporary. I backed away before they noticed me. When she came to check on me later, I pretended I'd been asleep. She tucked the blanket around my legs, her hands quick, almost impatient. "You okay?" she asked. I said yes. She lingered a moment, then left. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every word I'd heard, fitting them together like pieces I didn't want to see complete. Over the next few days, little things changed. She started keeping my phone at night, so it wouldn't fall. She handled my mail, saying it was easier. She suggested I sign some papers for insurance, for work leave, for things I didn't fully understand. "It's standard," she said, tapping the page where my name went. I told her I'd look later. Her smile tightened, just slightly. One afternoon, a neighbor I'd known for years stopped by. She answered the door and spoke to him in low tones. I couldn't hear much, but I caught my name, then the words confused and resting. When she came back, she said visitors weren't a good idea yet. You need peace, she insisted. I wondered when peace had started to feel like isolation. That night she took a call in the hallway. She thought I was asleep again. I wasn't. I heard my name clear as day. No, not yet, she said. He trusts me. There was a pause. Yes, I know what I said. Just let me handle it. Her voice dropped. If he starts asking questions, we'll move faster. I lay there, heart pounding, staring into the dark. I didn't know who she was talking to, or what faster meant, but I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. Whatever plan she had, it didn't include me understanding it. And the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the realization that my own daughter believed I wouldn't fight back if I did. The next morning I decided to stop pretending, not confronting her outright. Not yet, but paying attention in a way I never had before. Fear sharpened my senses. I noticed how often she checked her phone, how she angled the screen away from me, how quickly conversations ended when I entered a room. She still smiled, still asked about my pain, still called me Dad in that gentle tone, but it felt rehearsed now, like lines she'd practiced. She brought me breakfast and set the tray down with care. Oatmeal, fruit, coffee already cooled the way I liked it. You slept okay? She asked. I nodded. She watched me eat for a moment too long, then said she needed to run an errand. Just an hour, she promised. Don't try to walk around without me, I said. I wouldn't. She locked the door behind her when she left. I heard it click. I sat there, staring at the door, feeling smaller than I ever had in my own life. After a while I pushed myself up and moved slowly to the window. Her car was gone. The street looked normal. Peaceful. I wondered how many terrible things hide behind normal mornings. I made my way back to the bed and waited, listening for sounds that weren't there. When she returned, she seemed lighter, almost relieved. She chatted about traffic, about a sale at the grocery store, about nothing at all. I responded with murmurs, saving my energy. Later that afternoon, she handed me a folder. Some paperwork came in, she said. Medical stuff, mostly. We should go over it. My stomach tightened, but I took it from her. The pages were dense, full of language meant to discourage reading. I scanned them slowly. Consent forms, billing statements. Then a page labeled authorization. I didn't recognize the header, but I recognized the implication. It gave someone permission to make decisions on my behalf if I was deemed unable. What's this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She didn't hesitate. Standard, she said. The hospital requires it. I told her I wanted to think about it. She shrugged, too casually. Sure, no rush. But that night she brought it up again. And the night after that, each time her tone grew firmer. It's just to protect you, she said. You're not yourself right now. I wondered when concern had turned into certainty. On the 5th day, my old friend Mark called, or tried to. I saw the missed call later, when she forgot to take my phone with her into the kitchen. I stared at his name on the screen, feeling a strange surge of relief. When she came back, I asked about it. She frowned. He worries too much, she said. I told him you need rest, I asked, when she'd spoken to him. She paused, then said, yesterday, that night, I pretended to sleep early. I waited until the house settled, until the sounds of her moving around faded. Then I eased myself up and moved toward the hallway, every step careful, deliberate. Her bedroom door was partly open. Light spilled out. I heard her voice, low and serious. No. He hasn't signed yet, she said. I'm working on it. I leaned against the wall, my heart thudding. The other voice came through the speaker. Sharper now. You said this would be done, she sighed. He's stubborn, but he's weak. He needs me. A pause. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Another pause. Longer this time. If it comes to it, the doctor already noted cognitive issues. My legs trembled. I backed away before the floor could betray me. Back in bed, I stared at my hands. At the slight shake I couldn't control. Cognitive issues. I replayed the doctor's words from the hospital. Fog, temporary confusion. She'd been listening more closely than I realized. The next day she introduced me to a woman I'd never met. "This is Claire," she said. "She helps families manage transitions." Claire smiled politely, asked me simple questions, wrote things down. How was my memory? Did I feel overwhelmed? Did I trust my daughter to help me make decisions? I answered carefully, aware now that every word mattered. After Claire left, my daughter looked pleased. "See," she said, "we're doing this the right way." I didn't respond. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking about my house, my savings, my life narrowed to this room. I thought about the trust I'd given without question. In the early hours I made a decision. It wasn't a plan yet, more a refusal. I would not disappear quietly. I would not let my story be rewritten while I was still alive to tell it. But I also knew I couldn't move too soon. She believed I was weak, confused, dependent. I let her keep believing that, because if she thought she was in control, she'd make mistakes. And whatever she was planning, she had no idea how closely I was listening now, or how much strength fear can give a man who understands too late what he's about to lose. The hardest part of pretending was remembering when to fail. I had spent my life being competent, dependable, the man people turned to when something broke or went wrong. Now I had to forget things on purpose. I had to ask the same question twice, fumble with words, let my hands shake a little more than they needed to. Every instinct in me rebelled against it, but fear kept me disciplined. She noticed immediately. "Rough morning?" she asked. When I forgot where she'd put my pills, even though she'd told me an hour earlier, I rubbed my forehead and nodded. "Just tired," I said. Her eyes softened. But there was something else there too, relief, confirmation. She brought me the pills herself and watched until I swallowed them. That afternoon, she suggested Claire come back. "Just to check in," she said lightly. I didn't argue. Arguing would look like resistance. Resistance would look like awareness. Instead, I agreed and asked if I could lie down first, because the room felt like it was spinning. She helped me to bed, tucking the blanket around my legs again, careful and almost tender. When Claire arrived, I played my part. I hesitated before answering simple questions. I mixed up dates. I let my voice trail off as if I'd lost my place. Claire nodded, scribbling notes, glancing at my daughter with a look that felt heavier than sympathy. "Recovery can be unpredictable at his age," Claire said. My daughter sighed as if the weight of responsibility had finally been acknowledged. After they finished, I asked if I could rest. My daughter walked Claire to the door. I listened from the bed, the sound of their voices muffled but urgent. "We need to move sooner," my daughter said. "He's declining," Claire replied quietly. "We'll need documentation." My daughter didn't hesitate. "You'll have it." That night, she cooked my favorite meal. Too much effort, too much care. I forced myself to eat slowly, to complain about the seasoning, to leave food on the plate. She watched me closely, adjusting her tone, soothing, encouraging. "It's okay," she said. "You don't have to finish." I wondered when she'd decided I was already half gone. The next morning she brought new papers. "These are simpler," she said, setting them on the table. "Just temporary authority, so I can help you." I looked at the signature line and felt a flash of anger so sharp it almost broke through my act. I asked her to read it to me. She did, paraphrasing, skipping sections, her finger moving too fast over the page. "I'll sign later," I said. She smiled tight again. "Of course," but when she turned away, her shoulders stiffened. That was the first crack I'd seen in her composure. It told me something important. She was running out of patience. That afternoon, Mark showed up anyway. I heard the doorbell, and then her voice, surprised, strained. "He's resting," she said. Mark's voice carried firm. "I just want to see him, for a minute." She tried to block him. I raised my voice then, weak but loud enough. "Mark," I called. Silence followed, then hurried footsteps. Mark stood in the doorway, his face a mix of concern and confusion. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded slowly. My daughter hovered behind him, smiling too hard. "He's had a rough recovery," she said. Mark frowned. "You didn't say that on the phone." She stiffened. "I did," she replied. Mark looked at me. "Did she?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "Hard to remember," I said. Mark stayed only 10 minutes, but it was enough. He squeezed my shoulder before leaving. "Call me if you need anything," he said, looking directly at me. My daughter watched him go. Her jaw set. When she turned back to me, her voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. "You shouldn't confuse people," she said. "It makes things harder." That night she didn't bother to lower her voice. I heard her arguing on the phone, pacing. "No, I can't wait," she said. "He's unstable." A pause. "I know what I'm doing." Another pause. "If we delay, he could change his mind." She stopped walking. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm afraid of." I lay there staring into the dark, feeling the shape of the trap more clearly now. This wasn't about care. It wasn't even about money alone. It was about control, about rewriting my role from father to burden, from man to problem, and she needed it done before I remembered who I was. The next day, Claire returned with someone else. "A man in a suit. This is just a formality," my daughter said, brightly. "He's here to explain options." The man spoke slowly, carefully, using words like best interest and support. He never looked directly at me when he talked about my future. I asked one question. "What happens if I say no?" The room went quiet. The man hesitated. My daughter answered. "Then we'll have to consider other measures," she said. "Because you can't manage alone." I nodded, letting my shoulders sag. "I understand," I said softly. Inside, something hardened. They thought the danger was that I might refuse. They had no idea the real danger was that I had already decided to wait, because whatever other measures she was planning, she was rushing now. And people who rush make mistakes that can't be undone. Waiting became my weapon. But it was a dangerous one. Every extra day under her roof tightened the net she was weaving, and I could feel it closing even as I pretended not to notice. She adjusted her schedule, so she was rarely out of sight. If she stepped into another room, she left doors open. If she went upstairs, she called down to ask if I needed anything. It looked like care. It felt like surveillance. The man in the suit came back 2 days later, alone this time. He sat across from me at the dining table while my daughter stood behind him, her hands resting lightly on the back of his chair. He explained guardianship again, slower now, as if repetition might soften resistance. I nodded in the right places, asked him to repeat himself once, then apologized for forgetting. My daughter sighed quietly. The sound of a martyr. When he left, she brought me tea and sat across from me. "Dad," she said gently, "you're making this harder than it needs to be." I looked down at my hands. "I don't mean to," I replied. She reached across the table and squeezed my fingers. Her grip was firmer than necessary. "I know you don't," she said. "That's why I need to help you." That night she moved my walker farther from the bed. "You almost tripped yesterday," she explained. I didn't argue. I memorized where she put it. Instead, pain woke me before dawn. Sharp and insistent, I lay there listening to the house, to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of a clock. I thought about my old bedroom, my old routines, the life that had felt so solid just weeks ago. In the morning she announced that Claire would be bringing a doctor by, just to assess, she said. Nothing to worry about. The doctor arrived mid-afternoon, a man I'd never seen before. He asked me questions that felt oddly specific. Could I count backward? Did I know the date? Did I remember why I was there? I answered carefully, missing one question on purpose, correcting myself too slowly on another. He scribbled notes and nodded. My daughter watched him closely. When he left, she looked almost satisfied. "See," she said, "we're doing what's best." I asked what he'd written. She smiled. "I'll explain later," she said, and took my phone with her when she left the room. That evening, Mark called again, or tried to. I only knew because she mentioned it casually over dinner. "Mark worries too much," she said, stirring her food. "He called twice today." I asked what she told him. "That you're confused and need rest," she replied, "which is true." I said nothing. Silence can be agreement, if you let it be. The next morning she told me we were going to the bank. "Just to update things," she said. "In case of emergencies," I said. I was tired. She frowned. "You can sit," she said. "I'll handle the talking." That sentence lodged in my chest like a stone. At the bank, she spoke to the teller while I sat in a chair nearby. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard my name, my account numbers, the phrase temporary authority. The teller glanced at me more than once. When she finally addressed me directly, asking if everything was okay, my daughter answered before I could. "He gets overwhelmed," she said. "I'll explain later." On the way home, I closed my eyes and let my head rest against the window. My daughter talked about dinner plans, about a new mattress she was thinking of buying for me. I nodded occasionally. Inside, panic crept closer to the surface. The bank meant money. Money meant permanence. Whatever she was planning, it was accelerating. That night, I made a mistake. I called Mark from the bathroom, whispering. "Something's wrong," I said. "She's trying to take control." He asked questions. I couldn't answer quickly. I heard footsteps and hung up too late. My daughter stood in the doorway, her face pale, her phone already in her hand. "Who were you talking to?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Mark," I said. She inhaled slowly. "I told you not to worry him." I apologized, my voice shaking just enough. She nodded once. "We'll talk about this tomorrow," she said. Then she took my phone and didn't give it back. The next day, the papers were on the table when I woke up, neat stack, signature tabs already placed. "We need to do this today," she said. No smile now. "The doctor agrees." I asked to read them. She hesitated, then slid them closer. I scanned the pages, my vision blurring, not from confusion, but from anger. They gave her control over everything. Finances, housing, medical decisions. Me. "I can't," I said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand," she replied. "You're not capable of understanding." She stood up abruptly. "Claire will be here this afternoon, and the lawyer." My stomach dropped. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a countdown. Claire arrived first, then the man in the suit. They sat around me, voices soft. Concerned, they talked about safety, about dignity, about how hard this was for my daughter. No one talked about what I wanted. When I said I needed more time, the man sighed. "Time isn't a luxury we have," he said. My daughter leaned in close. "Dad," she whispered, "please don't make me do this the hard way." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear, not of losing me, of losing control. I nodded slowly, letting my shoulders slump. "Okay," I said. Relief flooded her face too quickly. Too much. She slid the pen toward me. My hand hovered over the paper, shaking. They all leaned in slightly, as if drawn by gravity. What none of them noticed was the way I angled the page, just enough to see the small print at the bottom. The clause they'd rushed past, the one that required a witness I trusted to be present. I said nothing. I just let the pen touch the paper, paused, and realized with terrifying clarity that if I played this wrong, I wouldn't get another chance to stop what was coming next. The room felt smaller with all of them watching me, their attention fixed on my hand, the pen hovering just above the paper. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and loud in my ears. My daughter's relief was still written across her face, and that was what steadied me. She thought this moment belonged to her. That belief made her careless. "I need a minute," I said, my voice thin but firm enough to stop them from speaking. The man in the suit glanced at Claire. Claire glanced at my daughter. My daughter nodded quickly. "Of course," she said, forcing calm back into her tone. "Take your time." They stepped away toward the kitchen, their voices dropping into a low murmur. I kept my eyes on the paper, rereading the line I'd noticed. Witness, an independent adult known personally to the signer. Not a caregiver. Not a legal representative. Someone I trusted. Someone like Mark, or like my neighbor, Mrs. Henley, who'd known me for 20 years and still waved every morning. I set the pen down. My hands were still shaking, but now it was anger driving it, not fear. When they came back, I looked up slowly. "I want a witness," I said. The man in the suit frowned. "That's not strictly necessary today," he replied. I tapped the page with one finger. "It says right there that it is." My daughter stiffened. "Dad," she said softly, "we talked about this." I met her eyes. "Then you know I've always followed the rules." For a moment no one spoke. Claire cleared her throat. "We can arrange that later," she said. "Once things are settled." I shook my head. "No, now." The man in the suit sighed, irritation breaking through his professional mask. "It could take days," he said. "You're not in a position to delay." I leaned back slightly, wincing just enough to look weak. "Then I guess we wait," I replied. That was when my daughter snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. "You're being difficult on purpose," she said, her voice tight. After everything I've done, I watched her carefully, memorizing the shift in her expression. This was the real her, the one she thought I was too fragile to see. "I'm scared," I said. Instead, the words tasted bitter, but they worked. Claire softened. The man looked away. My daughter exhaled, regaining control. "Okay," she said. "We'll get a witness." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'll handle it." They left soon after, promising to return the next day. As soon as the door closed behind them, my daughter turned on me. "You embarrassed me," she said. "You made me look like the villain." I shrugged weakly. "I just wanted to be sure." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Rest," she said. "We'll finish this tomorrow." That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like a warning. I thought about the witness requirement and realized something that made my chest tighten. If she chose the witness, it wouldn't help me at all. She'd pick someone pliable, someone I didn't know. I'm just someone who'd sign whatever was put in front of them. In the early morning hours, I heard her on the phone again. She didn't bother whispering this time. "Yes, tomorrow," she said. "I'll have someone there." A pause. "No, he won't object. He's tired." Another pause. "I'm sure." Later that day, she brought me lunch and mentioned casually that Mrs. Henley had moved in with her sister. "Just last week," she said. Funny timing. My stomach sank. That wasn't an accident. Nothing was accidental anymore. That afternoon the doorbell rang. My heart pounded as she opened the door and ushered in a man I'd never seen before. Middle-aged, polite smile, nervous eyes. "This is Greg," she said. "A friend from work." Greg shook my hand carefully, as if I might break. "Nice to meet you," he said. They sat him down, offered him coffee, explained the situation. He nodded along. Glancing at me occasionally, I asked him where he worked. He hesitated, then gave a vague answer. I asked. How long he'd known my daughter? A while, he said. She shot him a warning look. When the man in the suit arrived again, he placed the papers back in front of me. We're all set, he said. Just a few signatures. Greg leaned forward, pen in hand, ready to play his part. I felt the trap closing again, tighter than before. I want to talk to Greg alone, I said suddenly. The room froze. My daughter laughed nervously. Why? She asked. He's just here to witness. I swallowed, forcing emotion into my voice. I don't trust strangers, I said. Please. The man in the suit hesitated. Claire looked uncertain. Greg looked uncomfortable. My daughter's smile vanished. That's not necessary, she said sharply. We're wasting time. I shook my head. Then I won't sign. Silence stretched. Finally the man in the suit nodded. 5 minutes, he said. In the living room, my daughter's eyes burned into me, but she didn't stop them. When they left us alone, I leaned toward Greg. Do you know what you're witnessing? I asked quietly. He shrugged. They said it's temporary. I laughed softly. So did she, I said. Temporary things have a way of becoming permanent. His face paled. I told him enough, not everything. Just enough to plant doubt. I told him I wasn't confused, that I didn't want this, that once signed it couldn't be undone easily. He swallowed hard, glancing toward the hallway. I didn't know, he whispered. When the others returned, Greg stood up. I can't do this, he said. My daughter stared at him in disbelief. What? She hissed. He shook his head. I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable. He left, before anyone could stop him. The room erupted. The man in the suit packed his briefcase. Claire muttered about rescheduling. My daughter rounded on me, her voice shaking with fury. You ruined everything, she said. I met her gaze, calm now. No, I replied. I stopped it. She stormed out, slamming the door. I sat there alone, exhausted but alert. Knowing this wasn't over, I'd won a moment, nothing more. And the look on her face as she left told me the next move she made wouldn't be polite, legal, or slow. The silence she left behind felt louder than any argument. I stayed where I was for a long time, listening to the house settle, replaying the look on her face as she slammed the door. It wasn't just anger, it was calculation. The kind that happens when someone realizes the easy path is closed and starts searching for another way in. She didn't come back that night. I didn't know where she went, and that frightened me more than if she'd stayed. I slept in fragments, waking at every sound, my body aching in places that had nothing to do with surgery. When morning came, the house felt different. Emptied of warmth, stripped down to walls and echoes. I found a note on the counter. Went out early. Rest, we'll talk later. No signature. No apology. I folded it and put it in my pocket, as if it were evidence I might need to remember how quickly concern had turned into distance. I tried calling Mark again. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't trust myself to sound calm. Instead, I sat at the table and thought about what she might do next. If legal pressure hadn't worked, she'd try something quieter, something that made me look unreliable without papers or witnesses. She returned just after noon, carrying grocery bags, all smiles and casual chatter. I picked up your favorites, she said. Thought we could start fresh? I nodded, matching her tone, because I understood the performance now. She cooked lunch, humming softly, the picture of patience. When she set the plate in front of me, I noticed she'd added extra seasoning, too much salt. Sorry, she said quickly. My mistake. After lunch, she suggested I nap. You look tired, she said. I didn't argue. I lay down, fully clothed, listening. She moved around the house, opening drawers, closing cabinets. At one point she paused outside my door. I kept my breathing slow, and even the door didn't open. But I heard her phone ring. She answered quietly, and stepped away. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. "He interfered," she said. "No, not violent, just stubborn." A pause. "Yes, that could work." Another pause. "I'll talk to the doctor." The next morning, she told me we had an appointment. "Follow-up," she said. Routine. I felt a knot form in my stomach. At the clinic, she spoke to the receptionist, then guided me to a chair. When the doctor came out, it wasn't the surgeon who'd operated on me, it was someone new. The appointment felt wrong from the start. The doctor asked questions that weren't about pain or healing. He asked about memory lapses, confusion, mood swings. My daughter answered when I didn't respond quickly enough. "He forgets conversations," she said. "He gets paranoid," I protested weakly. The doctor nodded sympathetically, as if that confirmed her point. Afterward, she was quiet in the car. At home, she announced that a home health nurse would be stopping by. "Just until you're stronger," she said. I knew better now. Each new person meant another layer of control. The nurse arrived that afternoon, brisk and efficient. She took notes, checked vitals, asked me how I felt about my care. I chose my words carefully. "I'm grateful," I said. "But I like my independence." She smiled politely, writing something down. When she left, my daughter looked annoyed. "You didn't have to say that," she said. "You make it sound like I'm smothering you." That evening, she brought out my old checkbook. "We need to balance this," she said. Some things got missed. I stared at the numbers, realizing how long it had been since I'd touched my own finances. "I can handle it," I said. She shook her head. "It's too much for you right now." I noticed then that some checks were missing. I asked about them. She waved it off. "Automatic payments," she said. I set them up. My heart pounded. "For what?" She hesitated. Then said, "Utilities, medical bills." I asked to see the statements. Her jaw tightened. "You don't need to worry about that." That night I slept with one eye open. In the early hours I heard her moving through the house again. The sound of drawers opening in my study. I forced myself to wait until morning. When I checked, the drawer where I kept important documents was empty. My will, my property deed, gone. I confronted her at breakfast. "Where are my papers?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Safe," she said. "I didn't want you stressing." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Give them back." She met my gaze, unflinching. "No." We stood there, the distance between us suddenly vast. "You can't do this," I said. She sighed. "I already am." She leaned closer. "You don't have a choice anymore." Later that day, Mark finally called back. I answered quickly, lowering my voice. "She's taking things," I said. "Papers, money." He swore under his breath. "I'm coming over." Panic flared. "No," I said. "She'll twist it." He hesitated. "Then what do you want me to do?" I closed my eyes. "Be ready," I said. "I don't know when, but I'll need you." When I hung up, she was standing in the doorway. I hadn't heard her approach. "Who was that?" she asked. I lied. "Wrong number." She studied me, then nodded slowly. "We're going to have to make some changes," she said. "For your safety." That evening, she told me she'd arranged a short stay at a rehabilitation facility. "Just until you're stable," she said. "They can monitor you better." My stomach dropped. A facility meant isolation. No Mark, no neighbors, no chance to interfere. "I'm not going," I said. She smiled thinly. "You don't have to decide," she replied. "The doctor already did." As she walked away, I realized the danger had shifted. This wasn't about signatures anymore. It was about removing me from the board entirely. And if she succeeded, I might not get another chance to be heard at all. The word facility echoed in my head long after she said it, as if it were a sentence rather than a suggestion. I sat there while she moved around the house, packing quietly, her efficiency unsettling. She wasn't asking anymore. She was executing. I realized then that the danger wasn't arriving someday. It was already in motion. I asked when. She didn't look up from the bag she was folding. Tomorrow, she said. Early. I told her I wanted to speak to the doctor myself. She shook her head. You already did, she replied. You just don't remember. The ease with which she said it made my stomach turn. That night I didn't bother pretending to sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking through options that felt smaller by the hour. If I refused to go, she could call for help and frame it as confusion or aggression. If I went, I'd be cut off from everyone who might question her version of events. Either way, she held the story. And stories decide everything. Sometime after midnight, I heard her on the phone again. This time, she was calmer, almost relieved. Yes, he's compliant, she said. He doesn't understand what's happening. A pause. I'll bring the paperwork. Another pause. No, he won't need visitors at first. She laughed softly. Of course. I waited until the house went quiet, then reached for my phone. She'd hidden it again. I felt along the bedside table, inside drawers, under the mattress. Nothing. Panic threatened to rise, but I forced it down. Panic would make me sloppy. Sloppy would make me helpless. At dawn, she came into my room, with clothes folded over her arm. Time, she said gently. I moved slowly, exaggerating stiffness, letting her help me dress. She seemed pleased by that, by my dependence. As we walked toward the door, I saw my keys hanging on the hook where they'd always been. I hadn't noticed them missing before. I wondered how many things had disappeared without my seeing. The drive was quiet. She played soft music, the kind she used to listen to as a teenager. I watched the streets pass by, trying to memorize landmarks as if that might anchor me. When we pulled into the parking lot of the facility, my chest tightened. The building was clean, neutral, deliberately forgettable. Nothing about it invited questions. Inside, a woman greeted us with a clipboard and a practiced smile. We're expecting you, she said, looking at my daughter, not at me. Papers were exchanged. My daughter answered questions about my condition, my needs, my behavior. I corrected her once. She smiled and squeezed my arm. He gets confused, she said kindly. The woman nodded, writing it down. They led me to a room with a bed and a small window. Just until you're stronger, my daughter said. Setting my bag down, she kissed my forehead. A gesture so familiar it almost broke me. I'll visit tomorrow, she added. I knew better than to ask when, after she left, a nurse came in to explain routines, meals, medication. Visiting hours. I listened, nodding, storing every detail. When she asked if I had any questions, I asked one, but can I make a phone call? She smiled apologetically. Phones are limited at first, she said. Once we assess you, assessment. That word again. The hours crawled. Lunch came and went. I pushed food around my plate. My appetite gone. In the afternoon, a man came in with a tablet and asked me to answer questions. Memory tests. Logic puzzles. I did well enough to show awareness, poorly enough to seem inconsistent. Walking that line exhausted me. Later, as the sun dipped, I heard voices in the hallway. One of them was familiar. Mark. My heart leapt. I stood, ignoring the pain, and moved toward the door just as it opened. Mark stood there, flanked by a staff member. You okay? He asked, eyes scanning my face. My daughter appeared behind him, her expression tight. I told you not to come, she said sharply. Mark ignored her. You called me, he said to me. You said something was wrong. The staff member looked uncertain. Visiting hours, she began. Mark cut her off. I'm his friend, he said. And I think he needs help. I spoke quickly. She brought me here without my consent. I said, my voice shook, but it was clear. She took my documents. She's trying to control my money. My daughter scoffed. He's confused, she said. This is exactly why he's here. The staff member hesitated. We can arrange a review, she said. But for now, Mark pulled out his phone. I've already called a lawyer, he said. My daughter froze. You did what? She snapped. Mark met her glare. I didn't like the sound of his voicemail. Everything shifted then, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. The staff member asked us to wait while she spoke to a supervisor. My daughter stepped aside, her voice low and furious. You're ruining this, she hissed at me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a strange calm settle in. You already did that, I said. The supervisor arrived, followed by another staff member. They asked questions. They asked me to repeat what I'd said. I did, slowly, clearly. Mark backed me up, mentioning calls, missing documents, the rushed guardianship attempt. My daughter's composure cracked. She raised her voice, then caught herself too late. We're trying to help him, she insisted. He's not safe alone. The supervisor nodded thoughtfully. That may be, she said. But admission without consent requires specific criteria. She turned to me. Do you want to stay here? I shook my head. No, I said. I want to go home. The room went quiet. My daughter stared at me, disbelief giving way to panic. You can't, she said. The supervisor's tone firmed. We'll need to review this case immediately, she said. Until then, he's free to leave with a responsible adult. She looked at Mark. Are you able to assist? Mark nodded. Yes. He put a hand on my shoulder. I felt something loosen in my chest. Just a little. My daughter opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Her eyes flicked around the room, calculating again, but this time she was outnumbered. As Mark helped me toward the door, I knew this wasn't over. I'd escaped one trap, but she'd already shown how far she was willing to go, and now that her plan had failed publicly, the next move would be quieter, sharper, and aimed where I least expected it. Leaving the facility felt unreal, like stepping out of a dream that had turned hostile without warning. The air outside was sharp and clean, and I breathed it in as if it might anchor me to something solid. Mark guided me carefully to his car, his hand steady at my elbow. Behind us, my daughter stood near the entrance, her arms crossed tightly, her face unreadable. She didn't say goodbye. During the drive, Mark kept glancing at me, as if afraid I might vanish if he looked away too long. We'll go to my place, he said. Just for now, I nodded. Words felt fragile, and I didn't trust mine not to break. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I hadn't realized Mark had slipped it back to me at the facility. There were missed calls, all from her. At Mark's house, he settled me on the couch and brought me water. You're safe here, he said. I wanted to believe him. But safety had started to feel temporary, a pause rather than a promise. I checked my phone. Voicemails piled up. Her voice shifted from concern to anger to something colder. You're embarrassing yourself, she said in one. You're making this worse, she said in another. The last one was quiet. We need to talk. That evening, Mark called the lawyer he'd mentioned. They spoke in low tones while I rested, my eyes closed, but my mind racing. I heard words like undue influence and coercion. The lawyer asked if I had copies of my documents. I laughed softly when Mark relayed the question. She took them, I said. All of them. There was a pause. Then we'll start fresh, the lawyer replied. But we need to move quickly. Night fell, and with it came a strange exhaustion. Mark offered the guest room. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to unfamiliar sounds, wondering if she knew where I was. At some point, sleep claimed me. Shallow and uneasy, I woke to the sound of Mark arguing on the phone. No, he said firmly. You don't get to decide that. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. When he came into the room, his face was grim. She called, he said. She says, you wandered off and you're not competent to decide where you stay. I felt a flash of anger. She's still trying, I said. Mark nodded. She won't stop easily. The lawyer arrived mid-morning. He was older, calm, and direct. He asked me to tell my story from the beginning. I did, halting at first, then more steadily as details poured out. The surgery, the promises, the papers, the facility. He listened without interrupting, jotting notes occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back. "This is serious," he said, "and it's not over." He explained that my daughter could still attempt emergency guardianship if she convinced a judge I was a danger to myself. "We need to establish your independence," he said, "and document everything." He suggested a medical evaluation by a doctor of my choosing. He suggested securing my assets immediately. He suggested a restraining order if she escalated. That afternoon, we went to the bank. Mark drove. The teller recognized me, smiled politely. I explained that I needed to freeze certain accounts and change access. The teller hesitated, then nodded. "We'll need identification," she said. I handed it over, my hands steady despite the tension in my chest. It felt like reclaiming something I'd almost lost. On the way back, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. Mark glanced at me. "You want me to answer?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'll do it." I took a breath and answered. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound hurt. "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe," I replied. Silence followed. "You're overreacting," she said, finally. "You humiliated me." "I stopped you," I said. "There's a difference." Her tone hardened. "You don't understand what you've done," she said. "You need help." I almost laughed. "I know," I said. "That's why I got it." She hung up. The next day brought another twist. A police officer knocked on Mark's door. My stomach dropped. Mark answered. Calm, but alert. The officer explained that my daughter had filed a wellness report claiming I was missing and confused. I stepped forward slowly. "I'm right here," I said. The officer looked surprised, then relieved. He asked me a few questions. I answered clearly. Mark backed me up. The officer nodded. "I'll note that you're safe and aware," he said. "If there are further claims, we'll follow up." After he left, Mark exhaled. "She's escalating," he said. I nodded. "She's desperate," I replied. That realization steadied me more than fear ever had. Desperation makes people careless. The lawyer called that evening with news. He'd requested copies of my medical records. The surgeon had noted normal recovery, no cognitive decline beyond expected anesthesia effects. The clinic doctor my daughter had taken me to had written vague concerns, but nothing definitive. She built her case on suggestion, the lawyer said, not evidence. That night I sat alone on the porch, the cool air easing my thoughts. I thought about my daughter, about the girl she'd been, about when control had replaced care. I felt grief, sharp and unexpected, but beneath it was resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my money or my house. I was fighting for my voice. The next morning, a letter arrived by courier, from her lawyer. It accused Mark of interference. It demanded my return. The lawyer smiled when he read it. "Good," he said. "She's making it official." I frowned. "That's good?" He nodded. "Because now we can respond." "That's good?" He nodded. "Because now we can respond. And once we do, everything she's tried so far will come into the light." As he left, he paused at the door. "Be prepared," he said. "The moment you think it's over is when it gets most dangerous." I watched him go, feeling the weight of his words. My daughter hadn't lost yet. She'd just changed tactics, and whatever she did next would be aimed not at controlling me quietly, but at destroying my credibility completely. The letter from her lawyer sat on the kitchen table, like a dare. I read it again that morning, slower this time, noticing the careful language, the way it avoided outright accusations while implying plenty. Concern for his well-being, undue influence by third parties, immediate corrective action. It wasn't written to convince me. It was written to convince anyone who might be watching. Mark made coffee and asked what I wanted to do. I told him the truth. I don't know yet. Uncertainty felt honest, and honesty mattered now more than confidence. The lawyer arrived an hour later, calm as ever, carrying a folder thick with copies. He laid them out one by one: medical notes, bank records, a timeline he'd drafted, showing how quickly things had escalated after my surgery. "She's going to push for emergency guardianship," he said. "This letter is a warning shot." I asked what that meant for me. He folded his hands. "It means you need to be seen by the right people. Saying the right things, calmly." He paused. "And you need to decide how far you're willing to go." That question lingered after he left. How far? I'd spent my life avoiding conflict, smoothing things over, trusting that intentions mattered more than outcomes. That instinct had almost cost me everything. Now it threatened to cost me my daughter entirely. I didn't know how to grieve that while still fighting. The hearing was scheduled faster than I expected. 2 days later, emergency petitions move quickly. My daughter wanted speed. Speed favors the story already in motion. Mark drove me to the courthouse that morning, his jaw set. "Whatever happens," he said, "you're not alone." I nodded, grateful but aware that loneliness had a way of showing up even in crowded rooms. Inside, everything felt too bright, too clean. My daughter sat across the aisle, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She looked composed, almost serene. When our eyes met, she gave a small, sad smile, as if we were both victims of the same misunderstanding. It unsettled me more than anger would have. The judge listened patiently as her lawyer spoke first. He painted a careful picture: an elderly father, recent surgery, confusion, a well-meaning daughter stepping in to help, only to be thwarted by an opportunistic friend. He spoke gently, respectfully, as if every word were a kindness. I felt myself shrinking under it. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood and spoke plainly. He talked about consent, about autonomy, about patterns of control. He presented the medical records, the bank changes, the attempted isolation. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He let the facts breathe. When I was asked to speak, my mouth went dry. I gripped the edge of the table and told my story again, slower this time, choosing words with care. I talked about the hallway conversation I'd overheard, about the papers, about the facility. I admitted my fear. I admitted my weakness. I did not admit confusion, because I wasn't confused about what had happened to me. My daughter spoke last. Her voice wavered at first, then steadied. She talked about stress, about love, about feeling responsible. She cried at the right moment. I felt something in me twist. I recognized that performance. I'd taught her how to do it without meaning to. The judge leaned back, fingers steepled, and asked a few quiet questions. To me, to her, to Mark. Each answer seemed to tip the balance a fraction. When he finally spoke, his tone was measured. "This court does not see sufficient evidence to grant emergency guardianship at this time," he said. My chest loosened. "However," he continued, and my heart sank again, "this matter is not resolved." He ordered a full independent evaluation. He ordered my documents returned. He warned my daughter against further unilateral action. He did not accuse her of wrongdoing. He did not absolve her either. He set a date for review and dismissed us. Outside the courtroom, my daughter approached me. Her face was tight, the mask slipping. "You did this," she said, under her breath. "You chose him over me." I shook my head. "I chose myself," I replied. She laughed, sharp and humorless. "You'll regret it." In the days that followed, the pressure didn't ease. It shifted, messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Questions disguised as concern, rumors about my health. Someone had been talking. I knew who. Each call felt like another small erosion of trust. The evaluation went well. Too well, perhaps. The doctor asked hard questions and listened to the answers. He concluded what I already knew. I was recovering. I was anxious. I was competent. My lawyer smiled when he read the report. "This helps," he said. I nodded, but unease lingered, because competence didn't erase intent. And my daughter's intent had been made clear. One evening, as Mark and I sat watching the news, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can still fix this," it read. "Come home. We'll forget everything." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Another message followed. "Last chance." I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down and sat there, listening to the quiet understanding at last, that this story wouldn't end with a ruling or a report. It would end when one of us accepted a truth we didn't want. And judging by the words on that screen, she wasn't ready to accept hers yet. Morning came with a stillness that felt earned, not granted. I met the lawyer early, signed papers that returned my documents, and watched my daughter's access formally revoked. No speeches, no triumph, just signatures and consequences. By noon, a courier delivered my will intact, along with bank confirmations locking everything down. I felt lighter but wary. Closure rarely arrives clean. When my phone rang, I answered. Her voice sounded tired, stripped of performance. She asked to meet. I agreed. On one condition: a neutral place, witnesses nearby, and no surprises. I reminded myself to listen, breathe, and leave nothing unresolved. We met in the courthouse cafe, bright and busy enough to keep us civil. She arrived alone, eyes guarded, hands clenched. I spoke first, calmly, outlining boundaries, facts, and the evaluation results. I told her the guardianship attempt ended today. She accused Mark, the lawyer, the judge, everyone but herself. I waited when she paused. I asked a single question. Why hadn't she asked me? The silence answered. She finally admitted fear of losing control, money, and face. I acknowledged the fear, rejected the actions, and stated consequences would follow, including restraining terms, restitution discussions, and permanent distance if necessary. That afternoon, the police returned my keys and noted the false report. My lawyer filed notices preventing further interference. The facility sent an apology and closed my file. Each step felt procedural, anticlimactic, yet protective. At dusk, I went home with Mark. The house smelled familiar and wrong at once. Drawers were disturbed, documents missing, trust broken. We inventoried losses and photographed evidence. I slept poorly, but I slept free. In the morning, movers arrived to change locks. Control returned quietly, like breath after a scare. I thanked Mark, scheduled therapy, and planned repairs without rushing decisions or regret later. She tried once more, a week later, through relatives and softened messages. I responded through counsel only, brief and firm. The court issued a warning. The line was drawn. I updated my will, added safeguards, and named trusted executors. I downsized accounts, simplified access, and documented everything. Fear loosened its grip. Anger cooled. Grief lingered, heavy but honest. I mourned the daughter I thought I knew, and the father I'd been to her. Acceptance came slowly, built on clarity rather than hope, and it held. Friends checked in, routines returned, and days felt mine again without fear, haste, or doubt. Months passed. Recovery strengthened my body and steadied my mind. I gardened, cooked, walked, and volunteered locally. The evaluation closed permanently in my favor. No appeals followed. My daughter kept her distance. When we crossed paths at a store, she nodded, expression guarded. I nodded back. Neutral, boundaries held. I learned something costly. Love without limits can become leverage. Care requires consent. Protection requires evidence. Silence enables harm. Speaking early matters. I shared my story sparingly, not for revenge but for record. Truth doesn't shout. It persists, and accountability grows when light reaches dark corners within families and institutions alike. One evening, a letter arrived from her. Handwritten, brief. She apologized without excuses, acknowledged harm, and asked for space. I accepted the apology, granted the space, and offered conditions for any future contact. Therapy, time, and respect. No money, no control, no rewriting. I mailed my response, and felt the chapter close. Forgiveness, I learned, is not reconciliation. It is choosing peace without surrender. The past remained factual, the future optional. I locked the drawer containing evidence and labeled it simply, lessons. I didn't erase anything. Preparedness replaced fear, and vigilance became quiet habit without bitterness or need for applause. The final step was practical. I moved accounts to require dual verification, named Mark as temporary backup, and scheduled annual reviews. I met neighbors, rebuilt routines, and hosted dinners again. Laughter returned cautiously, then fully. On the anniversary of surgery, I walked the block alone, steady and unafraid. I passed the cafe where we'd met and kept going. Closure isn't forgetting. It's choosing direction. I chose forward. If my daughter returns changed, we'll speak with boundaries. If not, I'll live well anyway. Present and sovereign. This ending belongs to truth, patience, and courage earned through pain, persistence, and deliberate restraint. Looking back, the warning signs were ordinary, almost invisible. Concern that crowded out consent. Help that bypassed choice. Speed that replaced care. I share these signs now for others, not as instruction, but as caution. Ask questions. Read papers. Keep allies. Trust your voice. Age does not cancel agency. Recovery does not erase rights. Families can fracture, yet dignity remains repairable. Mine did because I paused, listened, and acted deliberately. The story ends without fireworks. It ends with balance restored, quietly, firmly, and for good. I survived control, reclaimed autonomy, and protected my future with patience and courage beside me. This account is complete. The danger passed because it was named. Justice arrived because it was pursued. Love endured because it was redefined. If you hear your own story echo here, don't wait for permission to speak. Gather facts. Choose allies. Demand consent. Move slowly when pressured. Quickly when threatened. Your life is not a convenience. Mine nearly became one. It didn't. Because I finished the story myself, alive, alert, and free. Thank you for listening, for patience, and for believing quiet truths prevail over noise, coercion, and fear, always. This ending stands final, resolved, and intentionally complete for viewers. Afterward matters less than living, yet endings anchor meaning. I step forward healed, cautious, and grateful. The house is mine. The voice is mine. The choices are mine. I keep boundaries, welcome honesty, and accept distance when required. Control lost its disguise here. Care reclaimed its shape. If reconciliation ever comes, it will arrive earned. Until then, I live quietly, securely, and awake. That is justice enough. That is the end. Thank you for staying, reflecting, and choosing courage beyond this story. May it help someone recognize danger early and act with clarity, support, and unwavering self-respect always now.